Ethiopia is one of the active countries in Africa. No famous historical stations. It has appeared recently, meaning it has gained height and presence in social media, the media to a large extent, as a result of the influential events that occurred in and around it. These events negatively affected a number of Arab countries, including Egypt, Sudan, and Somalia. Historically, Ethiopia was known as Abyssinia. Some people, or some viewers, regarding our comment on some episodes previously, especially about Ethiopia, said that Abyssinia means Africa. This is not true. Abyssinia means Ethiopia, and some of the countries surrounding Ethiopia may be like Eritrea, like Djibouti, like parts of Somalia, possibly parts of Sudan, but not all of Africa, the Africa of ancient geographers. They refer to Africa as Sudan. Michel Habish, when you find geography and ancient history in ancient books, the word Sudan still means Africans in general, and the word Africa itself meant Tunisia. I need to review historical terms to know. I understand the reality I am living in now, and it is the LL. The name is the same as Abyssinia. For us, our impressions of it in history are positive. Positive why? Because the messenger, peace be upon him, initiated the first migration. Hagar is known to be associated with Abyssinia. It is said in the text that there is a king with whom no one oppresses. This fact also draws our attention to a very important Rashid. He is the messenger, may God's prayers and peace be upon him, when he was sent to the Muslims to Abyssinia. So he was dependent on the king, not on the system. Nothing. The system in Abyssinia is a good system, or the system is a just system, or the state is a just state. No, it is the king in it who rules. This system is a just king, on the contrary, the system that existed in Abyssinia, at the time of sending the first migration to Abyssinia, was not a normal system. The system itself, which was non-king and non-Najash, that is. The regime was promoted to ministers. They took a bribe from Amr ibn al-As, the Quraysh ambassador. They tried to deceive the king or push him to, meaning banish the Muslims from the country. They even worked a coup after that against the king and a revolution against the king, against the Najashi. It could have put the Muslims in great danger had it not been for the king to win who is the Najashi and was able to shelter the Muslims once again inside my country, as the witness is that. The power of Abyssinia can be directed to the direction of the oppressor or the just according to the leadership that existed over it. And the leadership that existed over it during the days of the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, was a just and good leadership that is represented by Najash, which is why our impressions are positive about this position. The Prophet, peace be upon him, cautioned us about Abyssinia and driving in it. If it were unfair, could it be unjust or irresponsible, leading to war? The messenger, peace be upon him, narrated by Abu Dawood and Ahmad and validated by Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Leave Abyssinia as they have left you." It remains, but keep in mind that this text is a link to Abyssinia leaving us, meaning that it did not encroach on us. Also, I can suggest that it is susceptible to encroachment. If the emirate in it, it would not be fair. If the prince in it would not be fair, encroachment would occur from it. If it happened, he would still encroach here, but we have nothing to do except that we respond to this violation. We do not complain. We will not start this encroachment. We will not start Abyssinia with a war, but if they encroach on us, they are the truth. I mean, as you see in the episode, they encroached on the Arab countries surrounding them and affected by them. If an encroachment occurs, then we are supposed to respond to this. The trespassing, as the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him peace, told something like this is similar to fighting in the sacred mosque. We do not start fighting in the sacred mosque, but if we start fighting in the sacred mosque, we respond to this fighting. Ethiopia is a relatively large country with an area of about 110,000 kilometers are located in East Africa. Its population is 126,000 citizens. This is a country number 2 in Africa after Nigeria. It has borders with 3 Arab countries in the west. its long borders with Sudan, and in the east it has borders with Somalia and Djibouti. The two are, of course, among the Arab countries that joined the League of Arab States. He discovered a new boundary bordering Eritrea in the north, South Sudan in the south, and Kenya further south. Inside is the Blue Nile. This is a very important topic. The Blue Nile is one of the two main tributaries of the Nile River, the Blue Nile and the White Nile. The Blue Nile comes from a lake called Lake Tana in Ethiopia, and the White Nile comes from the Great Lakes in the middle. The White Nile passes through countries in Central Africa, including Uganda, and after that it is feared to enter Sudan. Sudanese Egypt is discussed in detail. Of course, it reaches Khartoum, and after that it is united with the Blue Nile at Khartoum. This Blue Nile comes all from Ethiopia. This Blue Nile is very important to us. The Nile is our Nile River in Egypt. The menu. 60% of your water comes from the Blue Nile and 32% comes from the White Nile. For us, the Blue Nile is the basis for the water that enters Egypt and the basis for the silt that reaches Egypt. How far does the Nile River extend Egypt? 97% of its water needs are ready, more than Egypt's water needs. Coming from the Nile River, only 3% or less, coming from remaining wells or any other source of water. Ethiopia encroached on the 3 Arab countries surrounding it, or even 2 of the cycles surrounding it, and one of those affected by the passage of the Nile River. The category that is Egypt encroached on Egypt by building the Renaissance Dam without consultation with Egypt, which is contrary to the agreements and treaties, and encroached on Sudan itself, military and political encroachment. It invaded Somalia in the east. As for Sudan, Ethiopia's ambitions in Sudan are very, very old, from the days of Emperor Menelik II, who was in the late 19th century. He had very great ambitions that he would reach Khartoum, even though he occupied the entire state of Gedaref, and his ambitions collided with the occupier, the English. The English were the occupiers of Sudan, and he was forced to make an agreement with the British to demarcate the border between Ethiopia and Sudan, and she left him. While he wanted Gedaref, he took states he wasn't entitled to. Like Bani, what do we say, for example? Beni Shankul Dayet Gulaya is in northwestern Ethiopia, very close to the border of Sudan, and it has gold mines, by the way. That's why he wanted to take it and curse it for halo. The English had English sympathy with the emperor from Lak in Doha for him, and it is the Shangul village where the Renaissance Dam was built. VD, originally from a land that was not Ethiopian, but it joined Ethiopia. Though he took lands without the right to do so, he desired to encroach further into Sudan, alternating between taking and returning. Until the year 57,157, there was a strong increase in encroachments, especially in an area called Al-Fashkar, inside the Gedaref region, or inside the Sudanese state of Al-Fashkar, which has an area of 2,000 acres. And his land is very, very fertile. Between it and Sudan, there are some water obstacles that make protecting it difficult. That is why Ethiopia encroached on it a very, very large amount, taking more than 1,000 acres from it, more than half, and it is still taking it until now. And the Sudanese army sometimes defends and sometimes protects it, and other times it gets away with it. The Ethiopian government is taking more than just Ethiopia trying to penetrate into Sudan politically, and of course it is taking advantage of the recent unrest in Sudan and trying to support Hamti and the Rapid Support Forces in ways, and if they are trying to reach out to Al-Burhan in very malicious political ways inside Sudan, warning of a severe danger to Sudan. As for Somalia, we all saw the agreement they made with Somaliland. Somaliland is originally separate from Somalia, and this separation is unofficial and not universally recognized. And Ethiopia began to agree with Somaliland, which is separate from Somalia. If it exports through its port of Berbera Ethiopian products, and the agreement is of course in violation of Somalia, and Somalia objected to it, Egypt objected to it, and many countries objected to it. This agreement did more than that. They occupied some airports in the Somali city of Gadwa, the city of Gadwa in the south, Juno, Somalia, region of Ajuband. Some airports were occupied. Of course, this also warns of escalations that are not nice. especially since the Egyptian army was trying to get down to Somalia to help with humanitarian aid inside Somalia, and this occupation is disrupting this descent. What is the situation as well? It is very tense. It is Egypt, of course, encroaching on it, is concerned with the dam. The story of the Renaissance is well known, and we can devote a special episode to it, because the problem of the Renaissance dam is a very, very complex problem, a problem of my own, such as the share of water that can reach the Egyptians, which is already small. In a few natural millennia, we are below the water poverty line for the world, and our only source is the Nile. For us, any projects on the Nile that are very dangerous without agreements are supposed to be effective. Ransom. These are problems, and we have problems with the agricultural area because we have the Renaissance Dam, which may affect the agricultural raka in Egypt, and labor problems. Too many people may be out of work, whether they are farmers or workers who work in agriculture, transportation, or very many things, or trade. I mean, they leave more than 1,000 people out of their jobs, and it has effects. All this, not to mention the danger. Something is happening to this dam. We are not reviewing this dam. Its engineering structure, and we are not reviewing the soil. The building on it says that the soil is almost collapsing. The conditions are turbulent and large quantities are filled. God knows what could happen if this dam explodes, and we saw what happened in our home in Libya, a library of disasters that are not calculated. Of course, Sudan may suffer from this issue more, but Egypt is affected very greatly. We can, God willing, create an episode for it to talk about. Ethiopia's geographical, political, and economic situation raises the degree of its greed. Ethiopia will not end up in this region because it has complex problems that always continue inside Ethiopia. First, Ethiopia is a plateau, and agriculture is difficult. The lands of Sudan are flat, the lands of Egypt are flat. Praise be to God, no. What do we have? It has the possibility of farming very well. Isn't Ethiopia like that? Ethiopia is a plateau, a high plateau. Agriculture there is very complex, even though it has a lot of water, but there is no high agricultural potential. And then overpopulated. There are numerous individuals seeking vast economic resources to sustain them. The Ethiopian army is of average strength, meaning it is not strong, which means it is frightening, nor is it weak. It is number 5 in Africa after Egypt, Algeria, South Africa, and Nigeria, but it is relatively stronger than the Sudanese army, especially with the unrest occurring in Sudan. Much stronger than the Somali army, and thus its expansion in the region. There may be something dangerous in it, and Ethiopia is a poor country, very, very poor, and therefore my greed for it will not end. It needs money, especially if it is a landlocked country. Also, this is another landlocked point. I mean, it has no borders on the sea, no access to the Indian Ocean, no access to the Red Sea, and therefore it must act with the countries around it and press to know how to reach it. A seaport that inefficiently distributes its economic goods. It is deemed a foundational Christian principle. In Africa, due to this reason, there are intervals marked by Europe's influence and intervals shaded by Western presence, along with interactions with the Zionist entity. This demands our attention for an in-depth episode illustrating Ethiopia's undying aspirations. Therefore, it's imperative we respond to the situation with transparency and foresight. First, prioritize the Ethiopian affairs file, considering it as one of the pivotal issues confronting Arabs and Muslims universally. The subsequent essential task involves reinforcing Arab and Islamic unity. For those confronting Ethiopia solo may face challenges, especially when considering prophetic cautions holding significant meaning. Whether I fully grasp these insights or not, the core message is the necessity for a resolute and courageous collective stance against Ethiopia, instilling some degree of apprehension among them. It is a very, very important point to solve this problem of unifying the Sudanese ranks. There is a very great danger to Ethiopia because it is penetrating into the Sudanese regime. And its penetration may affect not only Sudan, but the entire region and Egypt. And I can say that thank God the situation for Egypt is better now than before because the Bashir government previously. My support was for Ethiopia on the issue of the Renaissance Dam, unlike the Burhan government now, which is supporting Egypt on the issue of the Renaissance Dam, and therefore our negotiations on the Renaissance Dam may have an advantage at this time, provided that things calm down in Sudan. so that they can be able to be together on one front against the Ethiopians. And of course the situation in Sudan is dangerous, and it increases the danger of the situation in Sudan. Sudan needs electricity, and this is also supposed to be a problem that the Egyptians and Sudanese will cooperate in solving, because they need electricity and promises from Ethiopia that they will take electricity from the Renaissance Dam, and there is competition for electricity from the Renaissance Dam. This is very strong from Sudan. South Sudan, Djibouti, and Eritrea. They all want electricity from the Renaissance Dam, and of course Ethiopia itself wants electricity. But she is fed up with electricity and has begun to sell or think about selling electricity to the country. What is around her is the unity of the Arab and Muslim ranks in the face of this issue, which is what can guarantee us an exit from the crisis or overcoming Ethiopian ambitions. As for division, it only leads to failure.